Hello and welcome to Straight Talk. I'm Tim Gordon. We are less than 2 weeks out from Oregon's primary, and several key races like the race for governor could shift the state's political landscape. At the same time, Oregon is at the center of a major legal fight over mail-in voting, raising broader questions about election security and voter privacy. So what does all this mean for voters, and how is the state responding? Joining us today to discuss all of that, Oregon's Secretary of State Tobias Read. Read took office in 2025 last year. He previously served, though, as state treasurer, elected in 2017, and also spent 10 years in the Oregon House, representing the 27th district. That's mostly all in Washington County, includes Beaverton. Read also has a wide range of public and private sector experience, including time at the U.S. Treasury, and Nike. Secretary of State Read, thanks so much for joining us here on Straight Talk.
Thank you. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great to have you here. Let's get right to it. You know, with Election Day, it's good timing. It's coming up less than 2 weeks now until the deadline to get your ballot in. Right. What's your main message to Oregonians?
Look, we have a really terrific opportunity. The act of voting is such a fundamental nature of our democracy. It's how we hold government accountable, how we make sure that government is doing what the majority of people want. So let's not lose that opportunity. And we've made it convenient in Oregon. We were the first state in the country to make voting by mail our standard. That's why we have such high security and high turnout and low cost. We want people to know how to do that and to make sure that their vote is counted. So don't miss the chance.
Vote.
Yes.
For sure. We are the trailblazers here in Oregon, but you've had a lot of concerns, not about our vote-by-mail system, but about the attacks against it recently. Describe those attacks and what efforts you're making to defend it.
Well, it's really clear in the Constitution that states run elections, not presidents, and anyone who says something different is not paying attention to the Constitution. Oregonians like our system. They like it because it's convenient for eligible people. They can fit it into their lives. They don't have to stand in line. They don't have to get a babysitter. They don't have to take time off work. They can consult whatever resources they want to make their informed choices. So when people are trying to make that harder, I get suspicious. We are stronger, we are better as a community and as a state when more eligible people are participating. So we are on offense. We are making sure that no one is pushing back against our authority to run elections as we see fit.
Yep, and there are really some specific ways that you're on offense. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But what do you think the most dangerous misconception about Oregon's voting system is right now?
Gosh, that's an interesting question. I'm not that interested in one versus another. I'm just worried about things that cause people to not have confidence in our elections and to choose not to participate. We, I think, are rightly proud of our nationally leading position in terms of turnout, but even at those numbers, when we have 75, 80% of people turning out in a presidential general, that means 20 or 25% of people who are registered are not. So I'm never going to be satisfied until we get to 100. And I think people just should feel confident because they think about all the things that are in our ballots. We use paper ballots. That's hard to hack. Even my Republican predecessor, Dennis Richardson, famously said that. You can't hack paper ballots. Right. All of those ballots have barcodes on them. So if somebody loses their ballot or wants to make a change, or their dog ate their ballot, which happens more than you'd suspect. Right. You can get a replacement ballot, but that replacement ballot invalidates the first one, so no one votes more than once. Those ballots come signed. The signatures are verified. The audits happen after every election. The machines are tested publicly. All of these things should add up, I think, to give people confidence that our system is secure and accurate and fair.
Which is terrific. You mentioned, though, not everybody votes. What about those folks that aren't voting? How do you get them in?
Well, I think we just have to talk about it. You know, if somebody says my vote doesn't matter, any one of us could point to elections that were decided by just a few votes. I mean, the history hinges on these things. The one that always sticks in my mind was eventually Governor Kate Brown. Her first election was decided by 7 votes. Right. 7 votes.
Wow.
And every one of us in every community can point to something. I was just in Coos County, I think it was, where a school bond was decided by 36 votes. Imagine the experience that those students would or wouldn't have had if just a few people had changed their votes. So think about the thing you care about and think about how important your vote is to what that future is going to look like.
Absolutely. Great examples of why it is so important to do it. We've talked to Oregon Attorney General Dan Rayfield about the legal actions the state is pursuing against the federal government, the Trump administration, the latest over its effort to limit mail-in voting, getting those ballots in the mail. What's your involvement with that, and how do you work with him?
Well, we talk regularly about these questions because it is really clear in the Constitution, and I think we are lucky to have an Attorney General who is aligned with those values, who is not afraid to assert our authority. And this is just the latest example, because if you go back, it feels like it was a very long time ago, but the President tried this once before with an executive order that was also illegal, and I can say that definitively because Oregon and Washington State defeated that in court. We've also gotten the case dismissed when the federal government came and demanded the full voter record of every Oregonian, things like driver's license numbers and birth dates and partial social security numbers. And when I said no, they sued me. So it was a really interesting experience to be in a federal courtroom as a defendant, but the judge, and what I understand is a pretty unusual thing, dismissed that case from the bench before he left the room. And the federal government is now appealing that, but we feel really confident about the argument we're making. We think the courts are going to continue to uphold the Constitution and protect Oregonians' privacy.
Yeah. Why make that argument right now a little bit? Why is it so important? Why not just release those full socials and all the rest?
Well, they haven't indicated, one, they don't have any legal authority to have that information. Two, they have not indicated what their purpose is in seeking that information. And three, they didn't satisfy the requirements of how they would keep that information private. We've seen lots of examples of how that information can be misused and make people vulnerable. So I am not about to gamble with the identity of Oregonians when the legal authority is not there and the plans for privacy are not there. They don't have the authority for that information, and I'm not going to give it to them.
Yeah. So you're saying across the board that's important, and there are certain issues, maybe mass deportation issues that play into this.
Absolutely. It could be used for all kinds of things. I mean, ultimately, it could be used for a national voter database and used to diminish and intimidate people who are seeking to exercise their fundamental right to vote and hold politicians accountable. That is not the role of the federal government, and I'm not going to help them.
What do you say to folks, though, who feel like there's too much effort taking on the federal government when here at home we've got other things to worry about as well?
I think we can do both things at the same time. Fundamentally, my responsibility is to make sure that Oregonians who are eligible get to cast their vote and be confident that it is counted accurately. We've got plenty to do inside our own office. It's kind of surprising every time I say this, but I'm the 8th Secretary of State in the last 10 years in Oregon. So there is a lot of turnover. There's a lot of stuff that we are really diving into, shoring things up, making sure that things that have been neglected are getting the attention, the rigor, the execution that they need.
And that's one of the challenges of that office, is
Yes.
that it has been all this turnover. It's hard to get consistency and make progress.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's talk about the U.S. Postal Service, because this is unresolved, I believe, this ballot postmark issue where they're saying, we can't guarantee we're going to have it postmarked on Election Day if you're turning them in. Then what are you recommending for a mail-in ballot this year for Oregonians? The
best thing, if anyone can get to a county drop box, that is the best way to get your ballot in. Those are easy to find. They're throughout the state. Every county has multiple ballot drop boxes. So if you can get yourself there, you don't have to worry about the Postal Service. You know the ballot goes directly to the elections office. No worries. Yep. If you need to use the mail, please get it in the mail at least a week before Election Day. So that's for this primary. That's May 12th. After that, if you need to use the mail, go to the post office, go to the counter and ask for a hand postmark. Because, as you point out, the Postal Service's changes in their operations mean that if you're mailing from more than 50 miles away from Portland, it's going to come to Portland for postmarking and processing before it goes to its destination, even if that destination is just across town from where it started. So best thing is Dropbox. Next best thing is mail early.
Yeah, a week early.
Yes.
Is this new? It feels new to me. I mean, I always thought you could take it in and drop it off even in a remote box on day of, and it would get the postmark. Is this something that you're challenging as well?
Well, the Postal Service, and I sympathize with their position. They are under pressure and budgets and all those sorts of things. So they are thinking about their operations, and I don't know enough to represent their thinking exactly. But yes, the rest of us have come to rely on the idea that if I put something in the ballot, in the mailbox, it's going to get a postmark that day. We are told that's not something we can count on any longer. So we are definitely recommending people Dropbox is best, and if not, get it in the mail early.
Yep, and the ballots have been going out for almost a week now, I think, maybe. So they should be available to do that.
That's right. If you were expecting a ballot and you haven't received it by now, it is worth checking in with your elections office to check on that status.
Okay. Oregon's voting system is widely trusted, but Fairly or not, skepticism about elections has grown, especially across the country. That said, are there any specific issues or vulnerabilities that you see in our system that you want to address?
Well, I want to make sure that everyone knows what happens and how people are registered, how people vote, how people get their ballots in. I think sometimes it's really helpful to think about all of those steps. And remember, we talked about this before. The ballot comes, it's paper, it's got a barcode. People should fill that out carefully. Fill in the bubble, don't circle it or draw an arrow around it. Follow the instructions and sign your ballot. Sign it clearly, carefully. Use the signature you used when you registered to vote. Sometimes if you're wondering, did I use my middle initial, did I not? And if you have a driver's license, a lot of the time those signatures come from DMV. So you can look at your driver's license and remind yourself, did I use my middle initial or middle name or whatever else? And then when that ballot gets to the county clerk's office, that signature is verified, that the ballot is then separated from the envelope, so anonymity and confidentiality is maintained. All of those things happen. I think the misconception often and the vulnerability comes because people don't understand those steps, and they might be worried about what the security is, but it is strong. And if people want to see that for themselves, one of the highlights for me in 2025 was visiting all 36 county clerks across Oregon. Every one of them welcomes people to come in and observe those processes. Now is a really good time to do that because those ballots are coming in, that process is happening. You can see for yourself all those checks and security measures that are in place.
Yep, and I know you're doing a little traveling right now with some town halls. We're taping this on Thursday morning, but I think you've got one coming up this weekend in Portland.
Tomorrow night, yes, on Friday night.
To do the same thing, just to educate and take questions?
Yeah, it's really helpful. We go in this one tomorrow night. We'll be with Congresswoman Dexter, Representative Nose, and Representative Choatson. And yeah, it's really great to be in person and to try to respond to those questions and help people feel like they understand what we're doing.
Yep. I'm going to ask you one that's a little less specifically election related.
That's fine.
For the midterm, but we've covered a lot of this midterm redistricting battle that's going on. Texas and California first, and then it's gone on from there. It's going on right now. What's your take on that? And also, is Oregon to play a role? Are we a player in this, or are we just too blue to really matter in this battle?
Well, I think the process is always is challenging. I was on the redistricting committee in 2011 when I was in the legislature, and it's a challenging thing because the statute says you got to have the exact same number of people in every district. It has to be compact and contiguous, and the key phrase is that it cannot divide a community of interest, but that is not defined. So does that mean it's a school district or a county or a watershed or what? So regardless of how that process works, there are going to be funny lines and funny shapes, and we have to, I think, just be really clear about that process. Oregon has been able to do that the last 2 times successfully in the legislature, and I'm confident we'll be able to do that again. I'm not happy about what's happening in the rest of the country, but I can understand what's going on.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and
Great.
When we come back, our conversation with Secretary Read continues. Next, touching on state audits, campaign finance reform, and the changes his office is working to put in place. Stay with us. Hello and welcome back to Straight Talk. We are continuing our conversation with Secretary of State Tobias Read. Thanks again for being here.
Glad to be here. Thanks.
All right, we're going to move on with some more questions. And of course, you were a legislator for a decade before being elected state treasurer. Now you're Secretary of State. What's that transition been like for you? And beyond the obvious, what are the big differences between the two roles?
Well, I think, moving from the legislature to the executive branch was sort of like going from college to grad school, maybe. In the legislature, people have to, I think, determine a sort of legislative major. If committees are kind of like classes, we have to be conversant with everything because we're serving our constituents. But no human can be an expert in everything. So you got to pick your areas of specialization. But it's wide because you get to vote on everything and you can have an opinion on everything.
Sure.
Being treasurer, being Secretary of State, the range of influence is much narrower, but it's deeper too. So we actually have to execute on things and deliver for people. It's not as simple as passing a bill or voting a bill and then that's the end for us. We actually have to make sure that things work. So that's been great. It's a different portfolio at Treasury than at Secretary of State, but the dynamics are sort of similar in the sense that it's a similar size and people really depend on what we're doing. The Secretary of State's office, it's elections, it's audits, We run the corporation division, where every business and nonprofit that operates in Oregon registers, and we're in charge of the archives. So people can know our history and understand the debates on policies that we now take for granted, and go listen to those debates and understand where we've been in order to understand where we're going.
Yeah, I think people think of elections, obviously, but there's a lot more going on in your office than just that. In fact, we can talk about one of them right now. One of the big roles for the Secretary of State's office is to conduct audits of state agencies. The audits under your watch have gotten good marks and for being thorough and finding problems. But there's been criticism for years now about those audits not really getting the change and improvements that people would like to see. I wonder, why is that, and what are you doing to try and get some teeth in these audits?
Well, it's conversations like this that will help us, because there are many more things that we would like to audit than we have the capacity to audit. So the first thing is we're changing the way that we are deciding who we're going to audit or what we're going to audit. Instead of being attracted to the hot thing, we're trying to measure risk across state government. So that's an easy word to say. So what I mean is, where are we spending a lot of money and not getting the results that we want? Where are we vulnerable to some big disruption? Where are the lives of Oregonians really at stake? And we've turned that into some numerical indications and created for ourselves kind of a heat map of where can we get the biggest bang for the buck within audits. But once we do that, it's going to be really important that the public and with the media help, we can shine a spotlight on what those recommendations are. Because while we conduct the audits, the authority to change policy and change budgets rests with the legislature, or maybe with the city council or a school board. Sure. And we want to make sure that a great audit is not simply sitting on the shelf.
Is that the way it should necessarily be, that audits are independent that way and don't have enforcement value? Or is there a chance that enforcement could come with that and be more effective?
It's an interesting question. I suppose it might, and we say in the world of state treasurers and secretaries of state, if you've talked to one, you've talked to one. Everyone has slightly different authorities and responsibilities. I certainly think the independence of conducting the audit is essential. I don't report to the governor or anybody but voters. I go before the legislature to seek budget approval and that sort of stuff, but it's essential for me to be able to say I'm going where the data points me, not having an influence or an instruction on what is to be audited or is not. That really matters.
Okay. And I'm glad you think it's a good idea that we're talking about this, kind of shine a light on it and get public interest. What do you think the most troubling audit finding that you've seen so far is that maybe the public isn't so aware of?
Gosh, that's hard to think of a single thing. I mean, there's so many good examples, frankly, of because what an audit really is. I think there's a misconception sometimes. It's not a gotcha moment. It's really, at its best, a performance audit is to try to uncover an issue before it becomes a headline, so that we can avoid a crisis. We can make sure that we're narrowing the gap between good intentions and great outcomes. So I like the fact it wasn't actually an audit, but we talked about in the form of a management letter, a disconnect between an expenditure that was happening in Multnomah County and the preschool program, payment for seats that were not actually being delivered. That's an example of where there's a gap. We talked about some follow through that needs to happen at the Bureau of Labor and Industries, for example. We're really trying to just narrow that gap and make sure that we're delivering for Oregonians in ways that they can see and feel and their lives get better.
And then these entities hopefully take that information and really are thankful for it so they can do some change.
Yeah, that would be my measure of success if at some point, as ridiculous as this might sound, if someone on hearing that they're going to get an audit is not filled with fear, but is maybe excited about, hey, we're going to uncover our vulnerabilities and figure out ways that we can get better.
We're going to turn it back a little bit to elections now, at least the campaign process and campaign finance reform. Lawmakers in 2024 passed a reform bill limiting contributions and making other changes. The governor signing it, but the new rules weren't set to take effect right away. I assume that gives your elections division time to implement them, figure that out. Where does that process stand right now? And then we'll talk about the latest short session, and that's part.
Sure. Yeah, we are fully focused, laser focused on implementing this bill that was passed in the latest short session. The most important thing, I think, is that we now get a chance to make good on what the legislature wanted to do, which reflects voters' intention, and that's to limit to end the unlimited flow of dollars into campaigns. That's a big change for Oregon because we've not had that before. So we are focused on the work to make sure that happens. It takes effect on the 1st of January 2027, and we'll be ready.
Can you talk a little bit, though, because my understanding is in 2024, legislators passed a pretty strong campaign finance reform bill, but according to ProPublica and other reporting, 2026 really put out some legislation that provided some loopholes that really favored the wealthy and out-of-state donors as well through corporate work, getting that money and that got signed by the governor as well. So how does that play into this?
Well, I think what we have to remember is how complicated all of this is. What you need to hear from me is that my values are very much in line with the intent there. And as long as I'm Secretary of State, I'm going to interpret those things in a way that's consistent. I'm not going to let those loopholes happen. We'll have discussions. We'll have an opportunity, I think, to close those in statute if that's necessary. The process of legislation is a never-ending one. So frequently, I'm confident in fact, I've been instructed by the legislature to come back with recommendations on how to improve things. So we'll discover things that need to be refined and improved. But as long as I'm Secretary of State, those loopholes will not be something I'm going to tolerate.
Were you concerned when this passed, though, and you said, hey, this is a problem, we need to deal with it?
What I was mostly focused on was the need to clarify some inconsistencies, some contradictions in the legislation that was on the books, to give us a chance to implement this in a way that Oregonians can be proud of, and not to add this to the list of good intentions and failed implementations.
Yeah. So why is that so important? I think voters really want to feel like, big money isn't the answer.
Yeah. We don't want a democracy or a system where people feel like it can be bought, where the voices of the wealthy drown out the voices of every other Oregonian. That's what this is intended to do. I think those limits will help set us up and move us in that direction so that everybody gets to participate. But details matter here. We've got to do that in a way that candidates, that voters, that committees, that everybody knows what the rules are and can follow them. I have no doubt that the vast majority of Oregonians want to do that, but it's a big change. So there's technical, there's technological, there's education efforts. All those things have to happen on a pretty aggressive timeline so that we are ready to go in 2027.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you talk about that this is an ongoing process and that your goals are to make it the right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's one for you. What's your biggest desire for this May primary? We're back to elections fully now.
Easy. High turnout, low drama. We want everybody who's eligible to know what they need to do, to have their ballot in, to have it counted, and even people who are disappointed in the outcome of a specific race, I'd like them to be able to say, I got to go convince more people, but I'm confident in this process.
Yep. And that's a great and nonpartisan goal for you. Is it challenging being in this role, though, at all? That you're a Democrat, and elections are inherently partisan. Yet, you're in charge of making sure they go well. How do you kind of balance that, make sure that it's fair? And
Sure, I think I just try to be really honest with people. I am an Oregonian, I am a Democrat, I have opinions, and I'll tell you when I'm speaking as a Democrat, and then I'll say, now I'm Secretary of State, and my job is to make sure that your vote counts, even if I disagree with it. It's just being honest with people, saying, we are full people, and in our various roles in life, we have to take on different responsibilities and roles. It's no different for me. So, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I am most interested in making sure that our system works for everybody who's eligible, and that we're earning the trust and confidence of Oregonians.
Terrific. Okay, I'm going to give you a fun one now.
Okay.
The Oregon.
These have been fun up till now.
I know, it's all been fun. Yeah,
Yes.
it's been a great conversation. I really appreciate it.
Same.
The Oregon Blue Book photo contest.
Yes.
I hadn't heard about this. It's an even year tradition, and you want people to look through their lens and send you pictures. Describe this. This is really interesting.
Yeah, the Oregon Blue Book is great. I'm glad there's some on the screen here. This is our almanac. It has all the things that make Oregon special, from our state symbols, our state beverage, our state dance. We have a state crustacean, in case you didn't know. It's the Dungeness crab.
Dungeon, of course it is.
Yes, absolutely.
Love
and
those.
how deep is Hell's Canyon? What are the primary industries of Wheeler County? All of these things are in the Blue Book. It's a great gift, by the way, too. But we don't want to be so presumptuous as to say we know what the right image needs to be on the cover. So we want people to show us Oregon through their lenses, literal lenses in this case. So get your submissions in by Halloween, and we will pick the best things and put them on the cover.
That is so cool. And then check out the almanac, the Blue Book, because it's really something. And our state has such great variety, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tobias Read, thanks so much for being with us today. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
All right, thank you so much for joining us as well. And a reminder, you can stream Straight Talk on your own schedule. Download the free TV app, KGW Plus, available right now on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV. We'll see you back here next week on Straight Talk.